have a glitch in the readings. I don't know if you were wondering when you were reading this. This is pretty harsh. You read what's in the bulletin, what was given to you, Jeremiah 4, 1 through 10. But the reading was Jeremiah 1, 4 through 10. One Easter Sunday morning, that happened, and Leslie was reading, and the passage had absolutely nothing to do with Easter. It was one of these real harsh teaching lessons from the Apostle Paul. And it was like she read to me and read it and sort of looked over at me. And then and someone in the back sort of punched his wife and said, Bob punched Bobby and said, I wonder how he's going to unpack this one. One of the things we try to do around here is we just try to get real. So if something like this happens, then I'll just tell you. And one reason I wanted to tell you that is that I wanted to make a reference to the Jeremiah passage. And I'm sitting there thinking, do I just confess that we messed up a little bit? But I think I'll just read the passage to you. If you're still in Jeremiah, it's chapter 1, 4 through 10. It says, Now the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you, I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Then I said, Lord God, truly I do not know how to speak, for I am only a boy. But the Lord said to me, Do not say I am only a boy, for you shall go to all to whom I send you, and you shall speak whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord. Then the Lord put out his hand and touched my mouth, and the Lord said to me, Now I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and over kingdoms to pluck out up and to pull down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. You can see why this might have been important to Jeremiah, since he was going to be giving such a message like Julia's read. And so in this, there's this, God is saying, I've been with you all along. I was aware of you before you were born, and I care for you, and I love you, and not only that, but I'll be with you in this task that I've given you. And I will even give you words to say. Now, I wanted to say something about that because I was thinking that this today is some people really, for the beginning of the year is like January 1st. But for most of us that live on the edge of the university or are part of the university or have been in school forever, we know that the beginning of school is not January the 1st, but it's somewhere in late August, when we start classes. And that's when things start, And it seems like all of my life, my orientation to the beginning of things is the fall. There's an excitement about buying new school supplies and new clothes and whatever, all the things. Those, when I was a child, those were exciting times. And but there's also a scariness about being new and new things. And even when I was not a new student, I was a returning student. There was this moments, these times when I would feel sort of frightened, as I would find out what was ahead of me during that semester. I just wanted to say that, like Jeremiah, our lives are a message to this campus and to this world, and that God has purpose for us and intention for us that is more than just that is to be a good student, to be a good neighbor to the people around us, but also to be a bearer a word of grace to in a world where people, where everyone is not attuned to that. And so sometimes we feel a little frightened, daunted that God has, that our lives are actually to be a message to others. And I felt like the words to Jeremiah were good words. God's been with you, loving you all your lives. God cares about you, and God will, and that God is with you in the midst of this newness and in this time of newness. Now, today's gospel reading, if you want to turn in the New Bible, you can go over to the Newer Testament section. It starts counting again with the New Testament, and it's Luke 13 verses 10 through 17. Just a word about that. We really don't know where the writer of the third gospel was when he penned these words, when he wrote his memories and remembrances of Jesus. He probably was in a city that spoke Greek, because Luke is written in very good, is written in strong Greek, good Greek. Maybe it was in Rome or Antioch. And we don't know the exact date of the writing either. Some scholars say that it was probably about 85 CE, Common Era, 85, which means that it was a number of years after Jesus, after the resurrection. And give or take 10 or 15 years is what the scholars say. But what we do know is what we read in Luke. Luke highlights the great compassion of God, especially for the marginalized, those people who live on the edge, who lived on the edge in Jesus' day. Jesus was very responsive to them: women, the less than pious, tax collectors, the poor, the sick, and the oppressed. And there was a tension created. We see it throughout Luke. Because Jesus cared for people who lived on the edge. He stayed in, there was this tension with the religious authorities because he was embracing people that were not embraced by the religion of the day. And personally, the compassion expressed in Luke's gospel is really good and hopeful news to me. It's always, there's a part of me that always feels a little marginalized, and I've always, and the fact that the words that come to me about Jesus through Luke is that I am accepted, that I am loved from wherever I am. Now to read the gospel reading. Now he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and was quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, and not on the Sabbath." But the Lord answered him and said, "You hypocrites, does not each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox on this, or his donkey for the manger, and lead it from the manger and lead it to give it water? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 long years, be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" Then when he said this, all his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things that he had done. And may the Lord bless the reading of the gospel, and may we apply it to our lives Jesus was where he was supposed to be, where he was commonly on the Sabbath. He was a rabbi, and he was in a synagogue, and he was teaching. And he looks up and sees a woman suffering from severe kyphosis, or the bending of her back. And in Jesus' day, all afflictions were assumed to be caused by Satan. It was a demonic kind of thing, and it was just sort of an assumption was made. And so we know from Scripture that this woman had suffered from this condition for a long time, 18 years. So in the middle of what Jesus was doing, perhaps reading the Scripture, or perhaps he was about to make a significant point, but in the middle of what he was doing, he stopped, called her to him, pronounced her as free from the affliction. And he laid hands on her, and immediately she stood and began to praise God. We often read the stories of Jesus healing others, and I don't know if you're like me, you sort of wonder, okay, why don't I see that more here? Why don't I, or then the other question is, why this person, not this person? Are those the questions that come to you? When you read about healings in the New Testament? And so I don't have an answer to that question. I do think that miraculous healings that seem to defy the science do happen sometimes, but I don't see it often. And we wonder today, but you maybe I've set your mind on wandering as you wonder, about that issue. But let's not let the wandering hang us up, because there's more in here than just a story of a physical healing. Let's continue the story of Scripture and let it sort of permeate us. Let it fill us with our imaginations, and let it teach us. Let us ponder what God might be saying to us through this passage. And I don't know, I hope as we read it, maybe that's already begun for you. Maybe already you've begun to sort of think, what is God saying to me through this passage? Okay, so we have this disrupted worship service in a synagogue, probably there was this feeling of awe that there was this woman who had been sick for so long. We don't know if she normally attended that synagogue. We don't know who was aware of her condition. We don't know much about her. We don't know her name or anything. All we know is that on this day, she was there, and that Jesus made her whole. And that had to, I would think that would have been an awesome event. That would have, I don't know how anyone could return preaching after that, or teaching after that, that this has been done. And that this healing has been done. And my guess is that there was, in the awe, there were probably others that were just sort of giving God the credit and glory for that miraculous thing to happen. But everybody wasn't happy. Everyone wasn't happy. The leader of the synagogue it bothered him. He approached Jesus and he pointed him out. He said, okay, there are 6 days that you could have done this. You could have done this healing any one of these 6 days. You could have done it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but not on Saturday. Saturday is the holy day, and you're not supposed to do any work on Saturday. Seeing this event as work. Does this seem silly to you? Does it seem silly to you that here was a woman who was in great need, and Jesus made her well, and there is someone who's saying, yeah, but you didn't do it right. Wrong day. Maybe you should have worked out an appointment with her to come by or something. And and so there was this kind of tension there, and there was this tension between this real faith, real spiritual relationship of Jesus and And then there's this form of religion that's uptight, intense, and seems to be so controlling. We sort of have that today, some too. And and what I was thinking as we were listening to the beautiful and to Julius read from St. Francis of Assisi's prayer, and the choir did such a beautiful job of singing. And I was thinking about reform, that that Jesus' intention, was to bring a kind of reform to the religion of his day. He taught the people that that God was like a loving parent, that God was personable, approachable, and whereas it seemed that in the religion around Jesus that everything was structured, and there were traditions, and there had to be followed, and there were rituals that had to be followed. And but Jesus said that God is approachable. And the reason I think about St. Francis is because St. Francis was a reformer also. In the church, the Catholic Church, there were sort of two ways that Reformation took place. One way that Reformation took place, it still does, is from within. It's from within. And so St. Francis was attempting to bring about Reformation from within the Catholic Church. And so he was given permission to create an order, which was a group of people who sort of embraced his spirituality. And he was very radical in what he did, and radical in some symbolism that he performed, but that he used in order to speak the gospel, but also very radical as to who he and his group loved, who they showed, who they embraced. And they embraced, and as Franciscans continue to do, they embraced people that others did not. And they were very aware of a God of creation. And so they were bringing they were trying to bring about a radical change from within the Catholic Church. So Jesus was attempting to bring Reformation. And by the time this book Luke was written, Christians were already being pushed out of the synagogue. And it became clear that the Reformation was not going to take place, that something new was going to be built and done. And it was Christianity. It was the following of Jesus that the earliest disciples called the way. Okay, so let's sort of make this even a little more personal. I like to think that, I've said this I think last week, if we can walk away with one nugget or two nuggets, just something, then we've done well together. We've done well together. And when Helen and I were dating, we had this argument. This is my wife Helen, but still we did a lot. We were in different places, and so we did a lot of communicating by email. And and one of our questions was, oh, that was really good. Is that, is this a nugget or is this a gem? Well, I don't know which it is, a nugget or a gem. Both of them to me says it's something of value. But let's see if we can find a nugget to take with us as we leave here today. And what is it that we can take to the world outside us? The first thing I want us to think about is I just have a question for us all. Have we come to this time, this holy time, this time with Jesus, this time on Sunday morning that we call worship? And as we come in here, are we also sort of bent? pastoring and have a responsibility to open scriptures and share with you, or whether I'm sitting in the pew, if I'm real honest, when I come on Sunday mornings, I too find myself sort of bent by the experiences of the week, bent by the things that are going on. You know, I may be bent over with worry or shame or anger or guilt. I've been over from judgment and the feelings of invisibility, of being invisible, bent from false piety and condemnation, from justice or legalism, maybe even harmful theology, the things that sort of bend us over. When we come together on Sunday mornings, sometimes we're not aware of that. You know, we come in, if you're like me, you may sort of limp in on Sunday mornings. You know, it's been sort of a tough week. And I look out in the congregation, and I know where some of you have been, and I know that this has been a tough week. It's been a hard week, and so when you come to our time together, it would be normal or natural for you to be able to say, "Yeah, I'm sort of bent over today." You know, there are things that, I'm affected by the things that are in my life. And I guess the question I want is, so let's just sort of put that before you and let you think about what's bending you over. Is it fear, that's related to the newness of school? Is it grief? Some of us are letting go of things from the past and letting go of people from the past, places we've been, places that people that are not with us anymore. Are the expectations greater than we thought they would be? And there's lots of pressure on us, and we're sort of feeling wounded. What is it that's going on with you right now? And could you see yourself as being bent over, affected by these things? And even the leaders of the synagogue who were giving Jesus the what for, was telling him, this isn't what we do. This is not what we do on the Sabbath. Even those people, actually were bent. They were bent. They might not have recognized it, but they had been bent for life too. This leader of the synagogue was bent by his misplaced priorities and his personal piety. I believe that each of us have come here today just a little bent, and some of us are bent from the fatigue of the week. And it's been a strange week for many of us. Some of us have been in the midst of pain, the pain of others, and we're bent from our weariness. And so, so my first question is, in what ways do you feel this? And in what ways are you bent? What ways have you been impacted by, even from things from the past or things right now? The second question that I want to ask is, who are the people that you see and hear about, people that you mark in your mind as different around you, people who obviously have been bent by society and the world in which we live. People who are obviously bent. Debbie Thomas, an Episcopal priest that I've discovered somewhere and begun reading some of her writings in this, there's a journey for Jesus, a web zine for the global church, suggests that some people that we see, some people that we might not notice because of sort of the way we roll, but there are people that are sort of marginalized, that have been sort of bent by our culture. Now here's a list that of people that could find themselves marginalized. And this is her list, not mine, but I related to a couple of them here. And, she lists women, people of color, immigrants, the LGBTQ community, the poor, the homeless, the elderly, the incarcerated, the mentally ill, the differently able, the uneducated, or uneducated, the spiritually broken. And perhaps you found yourself somewhere on the list. I found myself on that list. And perhaps you thought of someone, or you thought of someone you know and care about who wears one of those labels, one of those things that she mentions. People that might feel thin. And if that's the case, then maybe the calling on our life today is to bring the kind of healing that comes from acceptance that we can give to others. The third question is, what might our being Jesus to a bent person look like? As we go out into our week. One is maybe it means that you pray as you go about your tasks this week. You pray for eyes to see others like Jesus sees them. Second thing, maybe it means experimenting with crossing the lines that normally separate us from people that we tend to see as the other people, the others. Or it could be that God's touch on our lives today may just be God is maybe calling us to just relax and to walk with Jesus and let Jesus continue the healing in our lives. Sometimes we can't do much as far as bringing healing to others because we are so bent ourselves. We're so tired. And I know that first week of school, I get tired just driving through campus, and finding your way. And some of you are brand new. Some of you have been here around a while. Some of you, but it's whether you're back or whether you're here for the first time. There's a lot of it's a stressful situation. And maybe the call of God on you right now is for God to let God straighten you out and lift you up so you can breathe and so you can see. To be honest, when I think about crossing lines and crossing lines and helping others to stand upright. I feel anxiety and fatigue just thinking about it. I invite you to look again at the first reading that Julius read. Actually, he didn't read. I read, but the reading in the reading, God told Jeremiah basically, "Do not be afraid. I have known you since before you were born, and wherever I take you, I am there. And I will help you learn when to talk and when to be a silent presence." That would be what I would want from God on this day, is that I would know when to talk and when to be a silent presence. 2 months ago, Helen and I met with 2 other couples in Greece, and I got to know one of the husbands of the other couple, the other 2 couples. One of them I had known but not very well, and we had been acquaintances, and then during our week in Greece we became good friends. And in passing, I admired his bracelet. And he told me that it had spiritual significance for him. And I told him that I thought I wanted one like it. So I was looking around in Greece for a bracelet. And he said, no. He said, he said, it needs to be a bracelet that has been blessed, not just one you buy at a souvenir store, you know. And so he said, I'll send you one. So I thought maybe he would, and maybe he wouldn't, maybe he'd forget about it. But a few weeks later, I received in the mail this bracelet from Jack. And it was a gift from a friend. So when I look down at it, it reminds me of my friendship and our conversations in Greece. But it's also a bracelet that has been blessed and reminds me that God was with me. So sometimes when I find myself at a loss for words and I don't know what to do next, I notice my bracelet. And it reminds me that Jesus is with me. I'm not alone. I do not have to be bent. I can help be Jesus for others who are bent. Amen.